British are famous for obsessing about the weather, but now they have lots to obsess about. Parts of southern England are literally submerged, and they have been for more than a month, as the wettest January in nearly 250 years continues to wreak havoc into February as well. The River Thames has reached its highest level ever recorded, threatening thousands of homes and lives. The Prime Minister, David Cameron, is visiting the hardest-hit areas, trying to limit the growing criticism of his government's handling of the crisis. And troops have been dispatched to flooded Datchet, which is near the Queen's Castle at Windsor. It is also one of the busiest commuter routes into London. Even the future king has waded in, Prince Charles visiting victims and urging everyone to wake up to the perils of climate change. And today in the United States, none other than President Obama, along with the visiting French President François Hollande, are calling for an ambitious global climate change agreement. Of course, extreme weather knows no boundaries. 2013 was Australia's hottest year ever. California has just experienced the driest year in its history. These satellite images show the dramatic reduction in snow compared with this time last year. All of this doesn't just impact our lives, our jobs, and the environment in which we live, but according to the World Bank, the global economic loss from extreme weather is rising as well, from around $50 billion in the 1980s to around $200 billion in the last decade. Last month, Rachel Kyte became the World Bank's vice president and special envoy for climate change. She says this is because the bank knows that its mission to eradicate poverty will be upended by, quote, the ultimate curveball, which is climate change. And Rachel Kyte joins me now from Washington. Welcome to the program. Let me just focus you, who are a native-born Briton, on what's happening in England. You've just heard, you're watching, your parents are here. Could this have been prevented or at least mitigated?
I think every country is trying to process the fact that the extreme weather events that we thought were going to happen to somebody else over there in the future are now actually happening right now here to us. I don't think that necessarily the specificity of each storm can be predicted, but the fact that the trend is here and that trend for the moment has brought a stream of storms across the Atlantic to hammer into Ireland and to the UK. I think we do have to be cognizant of these trends, and we have to be cognizant of the level of preparedness and the level of resilience we're going to have to build into our economies to cope.
Well, let's talk about that in a second. And first, I really want to ask you, though, look, we've got UN special envoys and conferences on climate. We've got EU benchmarks, and now we have a World Bank vice president and special envoy on climate. Forgive me, but how is this going to change? What will your mission be, and what can you do to affect what looks like inertia?
Well, I think in your introduction you laid out part of the problem, which is that climate change has been seen as to be an environment phenomena, something that environmentalists are worried about, something that ministers of environment need to be worried about. What we're trying to do is actually bring the science of climate, which nobody's arguing about now, into the economic policy making rooms, into the cabinet, into the highest level of decision making, and start looking at what does climate science mean for the economic trajectory that you are planning for. What does it mean for your hopes for growth, competitiveness and jobs over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And not in every country of the world is that a debate that's happening. And I think that we want to try to bring the science and the economic planning together so that we have a different set of decisions being made.
Well, let me ask you then, how will you communicate what you're just saying? Because, you know, up until now, we've had the doom and gloom sort of scenario of climate change. What is a way to communicate the necessity and the urgency, which still, despite the, you know, the talk about it all the time, doesn't seem to be getting through?
Well, I think there are three things that we have to understand. That climate change is causing costs now. The costs of repair. It is going to mean a cost of adapting to very different weather systems and the impact that they're going to have over our agriculture, over our energy systems, over transport, over cities. And then there is the additional cost of actually making the choices now to do things in a low-carbon way. That can be seen as doom and gloom. It's going to be more expensive in the short run, that it'll be cheaper in the long run. But there are huge opportunities that come with that. There are opportunities to live in cities where it's easier to breathe, opportunities to change the way that we farm so that we can feed people, and at the same time not have emissions from the way in which we farm and from the destruction of forests. Opportunities for all of the new jobs that will come from the greener economy, and the competitiveness that comes from public transport systems that allow poor people to get to work more easily. So I think we have to convey the excitement and opportunity that could come with expensive decisions that have to be made now, but that will have a benefit over time.
Some of the opportunities you're talking about obviously are involved in the employment sector. And God knows we have a world in which so many of our young people are struggling to find jobs. Is there a way to really train a whole new generation to deal with our climate-changing world? I mean, I'm struck, for instance, by people here saying, oh, my goodness, there's not enough people to help, you know, this village in England, or not enough people to, you know, fill sandbags, or whatever it might be. There just seems to be immense amount of employment opportunity for the future. You're the World Bank. What would be your prescription for that?
Well, so the need for jobs, good quality, decent paying jobs, is a worldwide phenomenon, more intense in those parts of the world where the youth population is burgeoning. So in each country, there is a transition in an energy system, a transition in the manufacturing, and the sort of the soup to nuts of jobs that would come in any new supply chain. The technical skills that young people need to have advantages to open up opportunities for themselves in those sectors are something that are country-specific, regional-specific. I think at the moment it's a little fatuous to say that there's going to be a green economy with lots of green jobs when we know that there's a transition, because there's a lot of people who will potentially lose jobs as the brown economy evolves. So the challenge for every country is to try to find a way to look at the skills mix that's needed, retrain those who need retraining, and to then build opportunity for the new jobs. And my father's a very good case in point. He was employed in the state-owned electricity industry. He retrained more than 20 years ago into energy efficiency, a huge industry for every country that has a built-out energy system today. And so I think that it's really something that needs cabinet-level attention in every country, whether rich or poor or middle income and growing.
You're talking
and I think we're only just beginning to see the data we need for that.
You're talking about political leadership. And every time we turn around, all these great sort of words that we hear from our politicians, all of a sudden, economic realities, they say, dictate that we pull back. So benchmarks, as I say, you know, go missed. Deadlines are missed. Conference recommendations are simply shelved and put in the drawer. Tell me about what it's going to take to get political leadership up to scratch.
Well, the Secretary-General has called for that political leadership to start manifesting itself this year. We can't keep pushing off to tomorrow that which we know we need to do today. I don't think it's a completely bleak picture, in that there are a number of leaders around the world, fairly sizable economies, who've decided that they just can't wait and have decided to put in place the kinds of national action that they need in order to re-engineer their economies and move their economies to a much more efficient place. So I think we see a real leadership coming out of Mexico, Brazil in certain sectors of their economy. We've seen leadership from the Philippines, which is one of the countries the most devastated in the short to medium term by extreme weather events. And so you can start to see national leaders supplemented by city leaders and mayors taking action right now. The question is, can the top 20 emitters of the world, can they lead in terms of energy transitions? Can the big food producers of this world, will they stand up and lead? And it's political leadership at the end of the day.
Well, you talk about the top polluters. Of course, the top is the United States. Though, and Mexico, which you mentioned, are thrilled with their new discoveries of shale, you know, the fracking and the natural gas and this and that. That is not a great incentive to, you know, increase green technology, is it? I mean, they're just thrilled to have the opportunity to bring out more fossil fuels.
So the shale revolution in the United States has helped the United States reduce its greenhouse gas emissions total, which is a perversity of the situation. But I think that shale is perhaps something that may only be a short-term or medium-term step in a transition towards towards a much cleaner and low-carbon energy system. We mustn't lose sight of the fact that by the second half of the century, we really need to be carbon neutral as a global economy. And so different countries are going to take different steps to get there, and maybe shale is a transition option for the United States. Whether or not it turns out to be the option everybody thinks it might be for other countries is difficult to say. North Dakota is slightly less densely populated than Lincolnshire. So each country will have a transition that it tries to engineer. At the end of the day, we need public political leadership in order to start decarbonising our growth. And there's no getting away from that.
Well, we'll be watching and we hope you prod that political leadership. Rachel Kyte, thank you very much indeed.